everybody, it's Christina of CraftyPaws. I wanted to come on and share this cutesy, kind of clean and simple card that I made for my nephew. My nephew turned 25 recently, and I had made him a special birthday card just for him, and I included a birthday check in there and gave it to my sister to give to her son when she was going up to visit him. But unfortunately, in all of the hullabaloo, packing, getting ready to help him move and whatnot, she totally lost the card. So he didn't get it. He did see a picture of it because he asked to see a picture of it, and he was just so gracious about the whole thing. I just am so proud of the young man that he has become, and I thought I would make him another card and send this along by mail rather than asking my sister to deliver it. And I wanted to share with you guys the process of how I made this card. I'll just go through real quick and share with you guys some of the materials I used, and I'll add on to this the process of how I crafted this from start to finish. So for the background here, I use this Balser Design 6x6 stencil. It's called Mini Heart Swirls, and I just thought it had a sense of not only hearts, but kind of water, which I thought went well with a little beaver. The little beaver is actually from this old whimsy stamp set called Furry Friendship, and I used him and this little sentiment that says, "You're truly special." And those of you guys who know me know I love puns. So I stamped that out and heat embossed that on some vellum paper, just a little tiny strip. The background, I just blended on some distress inks in 3 different blue colors. This little strip here is from an MFT, I think it's Blueprints 15, and just the little strip here was from that die set. Die cut it out and then blended on the same ink colors that I used for the background. And these cute little embellishments, they're I think glass or plastic or something. They're clear droplets from Pretty Pink Posh, and it's the 4mm and the 6mm. So the 4mm are the smaller ones, and I just added those for kind of, again, another reference to water, droplet accent pieces there. And I hope you'll enjoy this process video. Thanks so much for watching. I'm using this cute little beaver and the sentiment, "You're truly special." And I'm using my Misty stamping tool and trying to figure out where to place the image on this card front, which I cut larger than I expect to use. I'm using Memento Tuxedo Black ink because that is Copic or alcohol marker friendly. I'm stamping it out, and I actually got a pretty good impression. Now I'm taking this stencil by Balser Designs, and before I start blending on my ink, I'm putting down a little mask over that image. And I had cut that out of some scrap paper, and I'm using some washi tape to just put it into place so that I know I can remove it without damaging my card front, but I also know that I'm not going to get the blended ink on my image, which I plan to Copic color. All of this is to make this a single layer card, essentially. And the first distress ink that I'm using is Tumbled Glass. I wanted kind of a softer blue around the image, and then I'm progressively going to make it darker. Now this stencil is a 6x6 stencil, and as you can see, the cardstock that I am using is actually cut a little bit larger on the top. So I thought it was going to be maybe a 5x7, but I ended up cutting it down. The next color that I used was Salty Ocean, and then the last color that I used is Blueprint Sketch. And as you can see, the image is perfectly safe under that little mask. And now I'm going to go through and color with my Copic markers the furry texture on the beaver. And I'm starting off with a very light shade. This is an E70, and I wanted to do that just to see kind of where I thought the shadows might be without really committing. I've never colored up a beaver before, so I didn't know kind of what colors to use. I thought the body would be brown more or less. Maybe the belly would be kind of a tan or a yellowish tinge, and you'll see that I switch out the colors a little bit of the tail and the feet later. But basically, I'm just using a light flicking motion, just trying to get some texture in. For the little rosy cheeks, I thought I would use an R30. I didn't want to use an R20, which is a little more pink, because I thought this little beaver could be a little boy beaver. Now I'm putting in another light E color. This is an E40, and I'm using that color just to add more texture without going too dark. I didn't know if I wanted to keep him pretty light or if I wanted to make him more of a mid-tone brown color. I'm also coloring in the little feet, and I'm going back in now with the E70 again to kind of decide now at this point where I want the shadows. And I know I'm going to be going in darker at this point, but I still wanted to just kind of create layers and layers of furry texture. And like my coloring of dogs, my coloring of all furry critters like this is pretty loose. I just want to make sure I'm getting in some texture and just marking in where I think the shadows might be. As you saw there, I also colored in the ears with that R30. Now I've decided that the log that the little beaver is standing on is going to be in the kind of reddish brown tones. So I'm going in and marking the darkest areas of this log with an E29, and then I'm going to create a little bit of a mid-tone color underneath those areas with an E25. I wanted the log to be a different kind of brown from the brown of the beaver, so I'm using a different family of E's. I'm using the E20 series, whereas for the beaver itself, I'm going to be using the E70 series. The little branch that the beaver is holding is the same E20 family that the log that he's standing on is. I'm also going to color up the little leaves on the branch that he's holding with a YG family. I wanted them to have kind of a foresty green, so I'm using a YG61 and a YG63. By the way, if you want to know all the details of all the colors and the materials that I'm using, please check out my blog post, which I will link to in the description box below. Now for the belly of the beaver, I decided I was going to try and do, again, a different color in the E family. But I started with a W1, which is a very warm gray, very, very light. And then I'm adding some kind of yellowish tinged E colors for the belly. And for the tail, I initially started off coloring the tail the same E family in the 20s that I used for the log. And I thought repeating that color in kind of 3 places, the tail, the log, and the branch that the little beaver is holding, would look good. But at the end, I think I decided that it was weird for the beaver's tail to be the same color as the log. But I haven't gotten there quite yet. I'm gonna color in the beaver so that it's a little bit darker. As I mentioned, I'm going to use the E70s family. So this is a slightly darker E71. The base color was E70, and I'm just putting in the shadows where I think they would be naturally, where the arm joins the body, kind of the shoulder on the edges of the beaver, so that sides underneath the arms. And now I'm adding yet a darker E70 color. This is an E74, and I'm re-emphasizing where the shadows are under the arm, where the little branch is, on the edges of the beaver. I think for coloring furry critters like this, adding more and more layers of color and adding all those little flicks with the Copic markers really adds so much realism. I'm going back in now and putting in some of the same shadows into the log. I'm using the E74, which I think is adding some nice shadowy colors, both to the log and to the tail. But now I decided the tail needs to be totally different. I looked at some pictures of kind of cartoony beavers, and all of them seem to have a darker, kind of a dark gray for the tail. So I'm using a W5, a W7, and I'm also going to be adding little tips to the beaver's feet and to the tips of his little arms where the hands I think would be. Now this cartoony beaver doesn't have little hands, but I'm just going to add some flicks on the tips there. I use also a W9 to get a really deep warm gray. Now this is a little die cut strip from the My Favorite Things or MFT Dynamics Blueprint 15 set. I just thought having this little strip of texture would be fun and interesting for the card front, and I'm using the same distressed blue colors and creating a kind of ombre effect, blending that out onto that little strip. And I'm just going to add it to the right side of the card front. Now I'm adhering this card front to a pale blue card base that I've cut out, and I'm going to use some wet glue and glue on this little die cut strip over to the right side of the beaver. I just think it adds a little something something to the card, and I liked repeating those blues. Now for the sentiment, I'm using a little strip of vellum, and I've prepped it with my embossing buddy or powder tool, and then I've stamped with VersaFine ink, your truly special. And now I'm using some Zing embossing powder and charcoal. I didn't want to do it in black because the colors on this card are going to be softer. So I heat embossed that, and now I folded the little edge over so we could tuck behind the card front, between the card front and the card base, and I put some glue there. And as you'll see, I need to cut the little strip a little bit shorter so that it ends right where that blue strip ends. I should have adhered this vellum strip before adding that blue die cut piece, but it worked out fine in the end. Now I'm adding little embelly clear droplets with some glossy accents just to add my finishing touches. And that's my finished card. I hope you've enjoyed this process video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys are having a wonderful crafty day.